Hello again, and here we are, me and Dan Griffiths, technical manager at Tamlite. And if you've been following the conversation so far, you'll know that today Dan wants to talk about TM66 because the last time
Yes.
we were together, we were talking about remanufacturing. Remanufacturing is part and parcel of what circular economy is all about, and TM66 has been the response by the SLL, the Society of Light and Lighting, and CIBSE, to provide some kind of assessment of whether you're doing it well or not. Dan, good to see you again, as ever.
Good to see you too.
And
Good to be
tell,
back.
tell me, the circular economy assessment method, how does that fit for
Yes.
you?
Okay. Like I think for Gen 1, I'm going to put it that way. Obviously, we were uh, fortunate enough to be part of the beta program
Yeah.
with the LIA and CIBSE of um, doing TM66 assessment, having a look at it, filling the form, making sure we can actually score things reasonably accurate. So I think I've done about 40 now total. So I feel fairly comfortable talking about them and the positives and
Well
some of the
done.
things that I go, "Phew, I'm not sure about that." But yeah, I think as an entry metric, where for a lot of lighting manufacturers, the end goal, and we can see some people doing it with EPD, C2C circular, certification stuff like that is the top level. Put a whole team of people on this and nothing else that just to do that. Whereas I think what has been done very well is this is it's a starting point and it's a scoreable metric at least of
Mm.
assessing a product, and it makes you assess your own product a little bit more, I think. And that's some of the things that we've found since doing it, as we're trying to be more circular on everything that we do. It does, things can cost you points. And you do start to look at it a little bit like that now. Some are easy wins, and some you look and go, yeah, okay, right. Well, what about if we design it like this? I'll get an extra point.
Yeah,
So it's served its purpose.
that's the interesting thing for me because one of the it's too harsh to call it a criticism because as you say that we're starting from zero and we're trying to establish a method that works. But the fact that it's self-assessment,
Hmm.
there were some raised eyebrows about that.
Definitely.
And Bob Hannon, good friend of both of us, pointed out that if you want to move this thing forward, the last thing you can afford to do is give manufacturers a lot of money to have to spend
Yeah.
because that's what works against. But it does say I get the sense that when you're going through that assessment method, there's
Mm-hmm.
there is huge potential for wishful thinking, and there is a
100%.
huge potential for saying if that's where we need to go and we're not there at the moment, what do we need to do to
Yeah.
in order to get there? That's I think that's what you just described, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Essentially, John, I mean, I'm a big advocate for everything to be certified. I like standards, I like certification. So we're part of the LIA beta program for certification. We've got roughly, as we speak, about 40 products being certified or will be certified over the next couple of months. We're doing them piecemeal through just so we don't overlog them with 40 fittings because it's a great start, and I think that's thing. But there's always, I don't want to accuse anyone of marking their own homework, but you're marking your own homework effectively.
Yeah.
Um, so there's some questions that are maybe could be classed as a bit vague and a bit ambiguous. How how committed is your company to becoming more circular? Well, that can be varied, kind of, committed to it and doing it can be two different things. Obviously, luckily, a lot of it is evidence based. So you have a whole note section to add in your evidence, which is what we get certified against as well. If I claim a lifetime, here's my data to prove it. Here's my driver components. Here's where I've used this. This is where this is where I've got this from. And I think it's a great entry level metric for people, particularly specifiers, end users, lighting designers. If you're trying to pick something, relatively circular, you're going to be looking at something, really 1.82 above is where you'll be aiming, but it kind of puts that score in place a little bit. And I think that's a good start, and that's what the industry needs.
From that response, from the specifiers, are you finding that they're being generous with you, or have you got people out there saying, well, if you can't give us 3.5, you're not having it?
Not yet. I think, to be honest, give it time. I'm sure it'll come. I think, truthfully, because it's quite new and we're still, it's probably anything circular nowadays sells in terms of, if you want to do a CPD or host an event, circular sells. And I think people are just starting to learn it and understand it. I think a big part of what we're trying to do, and I think what the industry needs to do, is really educate people a little bit more on it, explain how the assessments work, what the scores mean, because a score can be a score. And I was talking to Bob the other day about it. Actually, I was at the LIA, and he said, people were a bit worried at first that if you're just getting a product from China that you're going to have a low score, but it doesn't necessarily mean that for some people. Yes, it will always favour UK manufacturing somewhat because of locality, of course, but you can still make circular products from the Far East. It might have come from the Far East, but it can still be reusable, recyclable. It's just promoting good practices, and I think that's a key thing. We had a mission last year. I'm sorry, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. Obviously, with our circa fitting, where we tried to make a fitting, work with lots of local suppliers, go back a little bit, and keep everything in a 30-mile radius, and that was our big publication piece of trying to do that, and that had its challenges. Don't get me wrong, but that was like a passion project of ours, and so that's going through TM66 assessment. Now, yes, that has a very high score, but so it kind of should. But I think people can be understanding of that a little bit more, but I think a high score doesn't mean it's right necessarily for the application. Some things will score poorer. If it's a new product, you're going to lose points anyway, because you've not made any changes since 2020. You've not took any cost or materials or changed anything. So there's always little nuances in it, biodegradable material in a light fitting. It's not going to happen. But these are all things in the assessment that you just accept. But you have to explain this to people so they really understand. You got a score, great. It's a good indication, but is there anything more I need to know? And I think that's what will come with it.
Yeah, because we've got this, we've still got this sort of horrible sort of fascination with the number. Give me the number. Is it UGR 16? Give me the number. But without that understanding, as you say, that does mean that we've got to sit down with people and explain to them how that number comes about. And that there's definitely a lot of information. It is fascinating that, as you say, that it can just be a Chinese import. It could just be a commodity fitting. But if it's a commodity fitting that's been put together the right way, it will still score sufficiently well.
Yeah, and that's the truth. I mean, it's putting those circular economy practices in play. A UK-made fitting with Zaga components and branded local components is always going to score well. As long as you're not, welding everything together, pop riveting it together, you're going to score well naturally. But, if you bought in a casting and assembled it and you built it in a circular fashion with Zaga board, you can still score over 2 comfortably. And I think, that's a key thing of, okay, there might be mitigations why the casting's not done in the UK. It could be a product bought, but your spec to a Far Eastern company is still to have that. It's just a great metric to really get people looking at their products in a different way. It'd be great if it caught on in the commodity market. It probably a little bit less, I suppose, somewhat, but it's what needs to happen, because in the commodity market is where the thousands are sold daily, and that's where they will end up if not. And I think it's a great starting tool for people to use. Having, as I said, having done 40 of them now, I feel that what it offers at least is some validation to your product design, and then you know things that you can make better instantly.
Yeah, in terms of making things better, the whole purpose of TM66 is that thing. It's sort of constant revolution. It's constant improvement. It's always trying to look to see what we're doing today, can we make it better tomorrow. So as far as Tamlite is concerned, were there things that you weren't doing and you went, that's an easy pick, there's no reason why we can't shift to that? And have there been things that where you go, I can't see us doing that in the short or medium term? Because that's the way that the CIAM form looks. It looks as if there ought to be things that we can do all of those, but we can't do, not for a while. Those.
Yeah, and I think there's some quick wins when we looked at like QR codes on external labels. Okay, well that's an easy win that we can start to implement. So you can access our data. Our product codes are always linked to our website. We keep our data for over 20 years, so from that element we'll always score well. But I looked at that and went, well, that's a bit towards another point. That's an easy process to put in.
Yeah.
Some of the other things are a bit more challenging. Obviously, like I said, if you've got biodegradable material, I'm going to look at that as a lighting manufacturing. I look after 4 departments at the moment. One of them being QA, one of them being lab, and one of them being lighting design and after sales and product development. I'd be looking at going, I don't need that hassle later on. I'd rather score down for that and not have anything biodegradable, but have a product that lasts a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which it is in a sense is an interesting thing that's in the CIAM form, that there's the trendy stuff, as in we can make a wooden one. Oh, good. Or you can have one that lasts 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason why a wooden light fitting shouldn't last 20 or 30 years, but as you say, making it out of conventional materials and getting it to last can be as good as, maybe better than, chopping down a tree and making a light fitting out of it.
Oh, 100%. And I think that links back to where we talked about remanufacturing in the last episode. If I'm making carcasses now, we're replacing carcasses of fittings that were 20, 30 years old that we used to produce, way before I was here. I would like to think that in, 15, 20 years, we'll be doing the same. And I think I would always keep to that method rather than trying to make something biodegradable or anything else, just for the complications it comes with, and design limitations somewhat. I think, it's building things to last and building things so they can be replaceable, and that's a key element.
Yeah. This is me going off on a bit of a tangent here, a bit of a hobby horse of mine around remanufacturing, that we've concentrated on the work that manufacturers like yourselves are doing, because if we can't get remanufacturing working from someone who's already making the things, then we're never going to do anything at all. But I've always had this this idea that there's this little warehouse down the road, and there's a guy who used to be an electrician, and he's trained up, and he's working with the local council, and he's sort of taking fluorescent fittings out of a school and he's replacing them and putting them back in, and that sort of sense of remanufacturing at a local level. And I wonder with TM66 whether that door opens for the possibility of, if you like, I don't know, let's call it remote but local remanufacture, that you make something, and in your design processes, in your manufacturing processes, you allow Fred and Frida in Rotherham to say, oh, we can work on that because we know it's a Tamlite fitting. Yeah. Does that ring a bell as an idea for you?
Well, that's a key bit that's in CM at the moment, and it's something as a business, we're traditionally a back to base remanufacturing currently. Just because obviously that's where our production lines are, knowledge, expertise, QA department. However, when you look at the impact of sometimes bringing everything back, I mean, luckily we are UK distributors. We don't deal with Europe, Middle East, and everywhere else where that gets a lot more complicated. But that would be necessary there, truthfully. I think for us as UK, it's about 400 miles back to base, but could we reduce that in the future and get certified people to remanufacture? Possibility. I think that is a classic example of something from TM66 that's kind of opened everyone's eyes a little bit to, oh, we've never really thought about that before. We send people to go repair fittings, as every company does, if you know what I mean. Well, if someone wanted something, I just need some, new LED boards, I'm really happy with everything else, can you do something? Well, yeah, potentially. It creates a commercial discussion that we've never had before. That recertifying that, making sure it's all right is sometimes the challenge that comes with that, but that can be done with training. It's a new thought process for manufacturers. Manufacturers, as we've always been, is what's on my production. I've got an order, let's make it. I've got an order. No one's ever really thought about that bit. So that's a good example of what it's bringing that is new to people's thought process.
Okay, right. I'm just going to say, just in case anybody can hear what I'm hearing from my desk, that is the sound of recycling in action. They're 2 days late. They should have been collecting those glasses and bottles on Monday, so I have no idea what they're up to. Anyway, let's just finish on this one, Dan, which I think has a relevance, because you just mentioned Europe. We heard yesterday that the government has abandoned the idea of shifting across to UKCA, and we're staying with CE. Who knew? You can still do UKCA if you want to, but now, how heavy was the investment from Tamlite in the UKCA process? Or are you just shrugging your shoulders and saying, well, we knew that was going to happen, so we haven't done anything about it?
No, we obviously, because we're part of we're LIAQA audited. You could see my face by that. I read the news, I must be honest, this morning, and I thought it was a joke at first. And I was having a chat with the LIA earlier about it. Frustrating would be the word. I've updated all instruction sheets twice, or product labels twice. So if you're like 17,000 product SKUs that we roughly have, all been updated to UKCA. On top of that, obviously, all carton artwork on some of the stuff where there's still printed carton artwork on recycled boxes. Massive, and we've all done it to be in line, and now it's gone. So. Yeah.
Have they told you where to send your invoice?
I could think of a few places. I won't say that on camera. Yeah, that is a good example of something that, well, why do it in the first place if that's the rule? And I think that the problem is with stuff like that, I'm going to go off a bit of a tangent here, is I know from conversations with the LIA, there's so many standards and legislation coming at the moment. Eco Design Directive, people are trying to push through, which has been a minefield. Light Source Directive, potential DENS MEPs. This is just going to make people not do it even more. Because all the companies who have done it to be compliant as they should have been, and the first deadline before it got extended, we've all just wasted money for no reason.
Yeah, horrendous.
Yeah.
Okay, hey, let's finish on that one. On that little grumpy note.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. I think that's been a great little snapshot, though, of the positivity that is around TM66 and what it can do for us, and what it can do for the manufacturing community, and more to the point, what it can do for the specifier and for the end user. Because at the end of the day, we mustn't forget that once we've made it, designed it, sold it, installed it, it's the people at the end who've got to look after it for the next 20 years. So we're doing everything we can to help those guys. Thank you, Dan. Until the next time, we'll keep that a secret to see what we're talking about next time.
That's it.
And to everyone out there, it's been good to see you again. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.